All right, everybody. How's everybody today? Guess what we're doing today? Anybody?
I can't even imagine.
For everybody that, the two people that don't know, this person to my left, this is Tara Kalin. This person right over there, Desiree Phelps, and Kelsey Chavez.
You almost said Sackett, didn't you?
I almost did say Sackett. Little Ree. And my name is Russ McClellan, and this is Small Towns Unscripted, which is simply a podcast to help people get to know each other in this valley of Lake Chelan. And that includes people that are brand new. We'll have people that are fairly new to the community, and we'll have some old dogs as well. And basically, what happens in a small town, as you guys know, especially if you grow up here and you're in business here, and, next thing you know, you're older, and people do know of you based on a certain segment in time or a certain industry that you're in, but maybe they don't really know you. So the idea of this is just an authentic conversation, and hence the name Small Towns Unscripted. So all it is a conversation about whatever we want to talk about, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So thank you, Kelsey. You are the first person.
Episode 1.
I
was just telling my friend, I can't wait for this to blow up, and then I'm famous. I'm so excited. The very first on the podcast.
Yeah, kind of it's a big deal.
It is a big deal. I'm saying it a little bit. A little bit of a big deal.
Yeah. Well, and the idea is too, for me, I know of you. I don't know you that well, but I know your dad.
Yeah.
I went to high school with your dad, but then I haven't hung out with your dad in a long time. So it's, again, there's a great example. Everybody here graduated in this podcast from Manson High School.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So we have that in common, but at different places and at different times. So it'll be fun to see, kind of from your perspective and what you've been up to, and then anything that I don't know, because these two know you better than I do.
What spurred the idea for the podcast? Where'd it come from?
Well, I think we were just talking one day.
We were sitting right up here talking.
Yeah. And it was so often people will say something like, "Oh, you're the real estate guy." Okay, well, yeah, I am that.
Or
so there's
a
so
negative
much more
story.
Or a negative story.
Or a negative story, something they recall from, your history or mine, or people thinking that they know. They know.
Oh, yeah.
I joke around on listing appointments. This is actually something I say, which is maybe funny to some, maybe not to others. But I'll say I have people in Manson that if I was the last real estate broker on planet Earth, they would not use me because I brought their daughter home late in 1986.
Yeah.
I mean,
and I was laughing. I thought, and this is, I'll tell you, this is true. My dad, who was he's passed away in 2020, but one of the nicest men I've ever met, is like a father to you.
Amazing man.
So he was very non-judgmental. He was very selfless. But he was also a cowboy and, old school. And so one day there was a gentleman who was probably in his 90s. My dad was in his 80s, early 80s. And he goes, "I don't really like that guy." And I was like, "That is so out of character for you, because he loves everybody."
Yeah.
Like you could call him and he would come change your tire on the pass and he didn't even know you, right, in the middle of winter.
Yep.
And I go, "What happened?" Because, he looked at your mom in that way. And I was like, "What? He's 90. Like, what are we talking about?" I go, "When?" He goes, 1952. So that's why we have a podcast.
So even the best of us.
Yeah, even the best of us.
Even the best of us. Yeah.
And that is why we love the small town.
And
right.
We love the small town.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, there's pros and cons everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that what we really want to focus on are the stories and our true feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what leads to deep connections with people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think in the hard times helps people, because you're not connecting on just the fun stuff,
Right.
and the positive things. You're connecting on that deep, real level where I get you.
Mm-hmm.
I get you, because we're gonna hopefully be honest and share some of those things with each other.
Mm-hmm.
So I know we said unscripted, but we kind of have a skeleton.
You have to for your first. You got it, right? You got it.
Right? So that we can stay on track a little bit. So I'd like to hear a little bit about you know, how deep your family goes generationally, and what role you feel like your family's had in this community.
We've been here 107 years this year.
Wow.
Whoa.
I
Wow.
know. A good
That is so cool.
good long time.
Mm-hmm.
I too, like my dad, when we're talking about somebody I don't know, I ask him, like, do we like him? You know, do we not like him? I mean, and he's always like, oh yeah, we like him. Good guy. And so that's funny because
Yeah.
I still do that with him. But
Yeah.
That is true.
longtime orchardists on both sides of my family, the Harding and the Finley side. And I grew up on the lake. I mean, it was a great childhood. The house I grew up in was built in 1919.
Mm-hmm.
Just a cute, like, little normal old house, and it had been in my family for a really long time. I think we sold it in like 2002, and it was really sad because we had to sell it because we couldn't afford the taxes.
Yeah.
You know, they'd owned it outright for as long as
Yeah.
I knew, and my family couldn't afford the taxes anymore, so we had to sell everything on the lake and rebuilt on my parents rebuilt on orchard land that had been in our family up on Wine Sap. So for the majority of our time here, it was apple orchards. My family started the very first in our area in-house packing shed.
Mm-hmm.
Every orchardist up until that point was outsourcing all of their packing shed, and the Harding packing shed was the very first in-house packing shed here locally.
So I still call that the Harding shed.
It
No
is.
offense to Lake
Sean
Chelan.
Winery.
Yeah, no offense. I love them
Or
too.
the barbecue.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
or
love
the
them,
barbecue.
Yep.
Yeah.
But to me,
Yeah.
it's Harding Shed.
Yep.
Yeah. Growing up, we didn't
That's the
even know
landmark.
that was Wine Sap. It was just the road next to Harding Shed.
Well,
Right?
now you bring up something interesting about living here, since we've got 4 Manson kids.
Mm-hmm.
Did we even know street names?
I still don't know street names.
No.
I'm like, oh, are you talking about where the Englands live? Like the street that the Englands live on?
Yeah.
Go past England's house and take a left, and then they're like, well, what's the name of the road? I'm like, I don't know.
I
Yeah.
don't
Just-
know.
yeah.
You know, you said the house on Washington, and I had to really think about
Where is that?
where that is.
Yep.
Uh-huh.
If you would have said Andy Finley's old house,
Yep.
I would have known.
Next to the Nelsons.
Yeah.
Yeah,
next to the
almost on
Nelsons.
your way to Blueberry Hills. Like
Yeah.
those are the
Yeah,
land. Yeah.
I mean, that's how we gave directions,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Yeah.
I wonder how many other small towns are like that.
I think all of them. I had a real estate client in Manson driving up through, and I was looking for an address that they had. And I was like, I've lived here a long time, and they're like, And after about the 3rd street, I didn't know how to find.
Uh-huh.
They got upset. And they're like, you're just another real estate agent lying. You didn't grow up here. And I go, that's why I don't know the street names.
Yeah.
Right.
And they were
Exactly.
just from the city, and they didn't understand that that's
Give me a
pretty
landmark.
normal. Like, what's that blue tower? Take a right to that other guy's house. Like, to you, that house to me would be like below Keith's house
Right.
or Andy's grandpa or
Right.
Paul's grandpa.
Yep.
you
Yep.
know?
Yep.
So,
Yep. Grandpa Finley's house.
Grandpa Finley's
Yeah.
house.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I just,
I remember him going to all the games.
Mm. He was awesome.
He was funny.
He was great.
Your grandpa was funny.
If there wasn't a cigar in his mouth, then something was wrong.
oh my gosh, I love that. Not
know.
lit.
No, not lit.
Not like
Yeah.
No, not lit.
Yeah.
Just the comfort of it.
I love that guy.
The
Yeah.
comfort of it all.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
so cool.
Yeah, and then sold all the orchards in early 2000s because that was rough.
Mm-hmm.
Orcharding became really difficult. Started to try new things, and then the house that we're talking about out on Washington Street was my great grandpa's house. Grew up going there, and then it sold to the Nelsons. I think in 2000,
Mm-hmm.
2015 or
Yeah,
2010.
Right. Yeah.
Something like that. And then Carly Nelson, who owned it, was just going through the coffee stand, and I happened to be in there. She's like, "Hey, do you know of anybody that wants to buy this little house on Washington Street? And then she's like, wait, I mean your great grandpa's house on
Love it.
Washington Street.
Yeah.
And so, and it still had all the orchard at that time.
Mhm.
And so Rick and I thought, well, that'd be so fun. Let's be orchard. It'll be so much fun. It wasn't fun. No.
So naive.
I know.
naive.
So young and naive. Thought it was going to be so fun. We orcharded for two full seasons. Knew nothing. Luckily, we contracted out with the growers and they did it all for us. But yeah, after 2 years of losing money on our beautiful reds and goldens.
Oof.
Oh yeah.
Oh.
Red
Yeah.
delicious.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, old growth. Trees
Yeah.
way spread apart.
Cold spot too.
Yep.
Yeah, down on that
I had
little
one of
hole
the
there.
only working wind machines
Mhm.
left down there.
Now that
Oh, yeah.
propane and that diesel got more
Oh.
expensive with those smudge
Yeah.
pots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was pretty back in the day though.
Okay, so that kind of segues into, I mean, you're kind of already going there, is how has this town changed since your youth?
Mm.
And I think you're really kind of hitting it.
Hugely. And
Yeah.
it's such a double-edged sword, and I think about it all the time because from a living here and now raising my family here, like you love the small town aspects of what makes Manson, and it's so sad to see all the change and the orchards, being ripped out. But on the flip side, being a business owner too, you're like, well, something's got to give, something's got to
Mhm.
change. We
Mhm.
need the growth.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And so I always go back and forth on
Yeah.
I mean,
how
I
to
do too.
feel about it.
I do too.
One of the things that's constantly said in our family is, I don't blame them.
Yeah.
If I didn't live here, I'd want to live here.
Yeah.
So you can't blame
Yeah.
them. It's just, I mean, we're over 50, Russ and I. It's like, yeah, we really don't want to change.
Mm-hmm.
We like it.
Mhm.
We don't even want to, change where we buy our groceries, let alone who our neighbors are. So
Yeah.
it's just hard.
It is hard.
Change
It
is
is,
hard.
and it is funny, right? When
Change is
you
hard.
when you're going through that situation where you're losing money, and the bank may be the next one to own it if you're not careful, which happens to a lot of
Mhm.
people. If there wasn't the ag tourism component, especially with wine and tasting rooms, that has evolved over the last 20 years, we would see a very different landscape. Because if there wasn't an agricultural component to replace apples,
Yes.
you might see a lot of weeds, and it
Yeah.
might be not as attractive. And there are towns that aren't as fortunate, if you want to look at it from a more holistic perspective. If that was you and you were going to lose a family farm and you had no buyer. So when it's interesting, I mean, you guys probably feel this too over the years, you can understand why people don't like it. I
Mhm.
wish we still had it growing up.
Yeah.
Ours was on the corner of Washington and Barkley, right?
Yeah.
Where I grew up. And yet, I'm also happy there was an alternative investor from a different place that had an idea that converted to vineyards.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It is. It's still a really
Yes.
odd switch because the apple industry was not tourism based
No.
at all. It was just agriculture.
Yeah.
So now we're relying on our vineyards for our agritourism. And to me, I mean, I feel really strongly that we're like really close to, if not already hitting our market saturation
Mm.
Mhm.
point, and we have,
With the tasting rooms and the
Yeah.
wineries. Yeah.
yeah.
Interesting.
I think we just did
Yeah.
a seminar a couple weeks ago in Seattle, and I think we found there's one in 2020 or something like that. And there's, I don't know how many is there now? 40 tasting rooms
Yeah,
around the valley.
48.
48, almost
48,
50 tasting
wow.
rooms around the valley.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's like the community gets upset. I see that on social media a lot, where there's a lot of armchair quarterbacks. There's a lot of
Mhm.
people throwing darts, and I get it. Like, you don't want it to happen, and if that's not there, I'm telling you from our own personal experiences with working with apple orchardists right now, it's not better. It's tough.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah.
It's very, very tough. And the ones that have made it this far are like unicorns. Like, how did you get through the last 20 years?
I know.
It was so difficult. And
And the varietals change so rapidly.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's so expensive to graft and do the changeover, and you're expected to do that every 5 years.
Yeah.
Like,
No.
My dad said,
Yeah.
How
do
it
it.
my dad said two things growing up in farming apples, right? He was a hardworking guy, raised 3 kids on 18 acres back when that was a thing.
Mm-hmm.
10 acres for most of that time. He said, if I won the lotto, I'd just farm apples till it was all gone.
Yeah.
And he goes, never ask me how much I make per hour.
Yeah.
Those are the two, like, it was a lifestyle. And I'm
It
sure
is.
that you remember that. You remember that.
Mhm.
And so when people are throwing darts at the future and change, what we know is it's inevitable.
Yeah.
So how do we help guide it, right?
Yeah.
And you're a part of that now.
Mm-hmm.
Well, okay, so before we get into her current, what was your first job?
Ooh.
Oh, my very first job was so my family sold the Harding packing shed to the Klutz for Lakeshland Winery, and I started hostessing, bussing at the barbecue there.
Oh, that was your first
My
job
very first job.
at your
Wow.
Yeah.
old place.
I was like,
Wow.
oh, just last year I was rollerblading here.
That's perfect.
That
Now
is
I'm-
interesting
Mhm.
because you went with the change immediately.
And stayed there for a long time. I was there for 8 years.
Wow.
I worked all through college.
Now, some people might have a
Barbecue
really hard
manager.
time with that. You know, like
Uh,
the emotional aspect.
Yeah, yeah. I didn't. I was too young to realize what we had lost in the
Mhm.
sale, which was a lot. I mean, it was needed for my family, obviously, but looking back now on all of the property
Yeah.
that went, a little bit of a heartbreaker. I mean, I love
Yeah.
to see what it's transformed
Sure.
into, but
Wow.
yeah, so
Okay.
we sold, and then I went like right into working
there.
there, and then just worked there for a long time. It was a great job.
Okay.
managed the
So
barbecue for
let's take
years
that
and-
into how did you get to where you are now? And what are you doing now? And how did you get there from
Yeah.
this?
I do quite a few things now. I feel like I don't land on just one thing. So I worked at the Lakeshland Winery, barbecue specifically. And I loved it. Started my young year of 14. Started as a busser and couldn't wait to get to 16 because you got to serve when you were
So we're
16.
talking more tips.
More
This is what
tips.
feeds the kids the tips.
And I know things have changed, but I don't know if you guys knew back then what barbecue tips were like. Like that is where you were going to make it. That's where you wanted to work. Structure's changed a little bit there now. You have to order at the, when you
Yeah,
go
yeah,
in,
yeah.
you do order. It used to be a full sit down
Yes, right.
order thing. And then I had the opportunity to manage the barbecue, so that was really great. Did that on my summers home from college, which worked out well because it's seasonal there.
So I feel like this is starting to feed your
Yes, love of
service.
mostly
and-
service. Yeah,
Mhm.
I really do. I do like the wine aspect side of things, but more than that, it's the customer service. I love being with people and talking with people, and and they still call that lower vineyard there, right above Lakeshland Winery, is the Harding Vineyard, because we had
Aw.
planted that like right at the time of
transition.
transition. Yeah. So then I got married and moved to Spokane because that's what I thought, you're supposed to do,
Yeah.
leave your small town and
Yeah.
live in the big
Ah,
city.
yes.
Yep.
That's a common
Yep.
conception.
Yeah. Rick and I bought our first house in Spokane when we were 21 and 22 in Felony Flats. That's what they call it.
Felony Flats.
Felony Flats of Spokane. It was great. Bought our first house for $69,000.
Nice.
Oh my gosh.
that
That's
crazy?
funny. It's
Wow.
funny that Grace and I got married, and I was 21 and moved to Spokane after college at Central.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh,
On
this
the
is
corner-
a common thing.
I
that-
had
that
an
people
office on
do
the
here.
corner of Mission and Argonne, right out of college.
Oh, yeah?
A real estate office there, and lived in the valley off of Pine.
I loved it. Didn't
Yeah,
you? I thought
I
Spokane was great.
Yeah, it was a very different, from here, but not too big.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and then
The
my
spread out city.
And the valley now is a city. The
Yeah,
Spokane
it's
Valley is its own
incorporated
incorporated.
now, yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's funny that we had that. And I was 21 when I bought my
I
first
mean,
house. It was 32 grand.
To be honest, I come from the city, but on the other side of the state, and
I'm sorry about that.
Yeah.
yeah. So I was never continuing east, right? I was always going back home, going
Right.
west. So
Right.
everyone, I felt like my perspective when I moved here was that everybody here went to Spokane.
Yeah.
I mean, for everything. Like even
Oh, we have a special guest. Hi, Sharky.
see,
Hi, Sharky.
there's another local yokel stopping by.
Say hello.
Are you going to be free in a little bit? Sharky
Everyone
wants you.
wants you.
Sharky, I'll call you when I'm done.
Hi, very good.
Okay, bye.
That's perfect. Small
Yeah.
Towns Unscripted.
Unscripted.
Yeah.
Bam. There it is.
So you're saying, oh, that's funny. No, to me that seems like, yeah,
That's what everybody
seems
did.
like that's where
Mm.
that's where everybody from here went.
Mhm.
Everyone went to Wazoo or just something
Central,
else.
Eastern.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that way.
Where was
didn't-
college?
I started at Linfield in McMinnville, Oregon,
Wow.
Baseball college.
and football. Yeah. I say that I went because I wanted a small private school, but really I went because my boyfriend went to, who's now my husband, so it worked out well.
Good move.
Went to Coos Bay to a community college down there. There were still 3 hours between us. There was a lot of space, but
But
it was
not-
closer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
8 or whatever.
Yeah, it was closer.
What was your game plan in that when you were in college?
I was going to be a nurse.
Nurse.
Yeah.
Oh,
I did all
Whoa.
of my
I
all of my
remember that.
undergrad in nursing.
So when you went to Spokane, was that the game plan?
Oh yeah, I followed him again. Yep. So he
funny.
finished his AA. He was playing soccer for a community
Yeah.
college down there, and I was at Linfield and did all of my undergrad in nursing, and then he transferred to Eastern. So I decided to transfer to Eastern too, and then got there and decided I didn't want to be a nurse anymore. I really wanted to be a mom. I knew
There
that
you
that's
go.
what I wanted to do. And I was watching a lot of these other lifestyles, the lifestyle of nursing, and that didn't look very conducive to what I
Yeah,
wanted
it's
to
tough.
do, which was be home.
That's
Yeah.
tough.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
I also could not get into the nursing program.
Mm.
And that was really difficult for
It's
me.
tough.
Yeah, I had really, I thought, like really pretty good grades.
Mhm.
And
Your
I
heart's
guess
not in it, right? Like
Yeah.
like you said.
it was
Well,
for
yeah.
a reason.
Yeah.
Right. Things are for
Yeah.
a reason.
Yeah.
For a reason.
Right.
Always works out.
Mm-hmm.
And he turned out to be a mom.
Yep. And,
Several.
and
Yeah. How
I-
many kids do you
3.
have? Okay.
I got to marry that boy that I started dating in high school.
Wow.
It all worked out okay.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we lived in Spokane for a couple years. Had our first house there. That was great. We both finished college, and then like really started to think about wanting to start a family, and it just didn't feel like Spokane was
The place.
where we wanted to do that. So
Yeah.
moved back, and I needed a job, and so I told my grandparents, who owns Rio Vista Wines. They had just been in it for a handful of years.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I said, I should start this second tasting room in downtown Manson for you and take over the management side of things. And they said, you should absolutely do
So
that.
this is
Here
on
you
the
go.
other side of your family.
Yeah, this is on the other side of
So,
the family.
so lots of fruit and,
And this
farming.
was
Yep.
Rio Vista on the Columbia.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Still there.
Yeah,
Still
that's
in
a cool
operation.
spot.
It's the
It's-
coolest spot.
It's
That helps me.
beautiful.
That we have a new agent that lives in Lake Indiana Estates, right?
Oh,
And that's a big deal in that whole community, that winery, because you can take your boat.
I know.
Yeah.
We have
Go
a
to the
huge
beach.
boat following. I mean, there's really nothing like it. It's
Yeah.
really cool.
No, your Sundays with music
I
and
know.
just sitting on the grass. That's a
Yeah.
real cool vibe.
It is.
I've
Such a
met.
destination.
Is that your grandfather that started that?
Mm-hmm.
I've met
On my
him.
mom's side.
I met him when he first went out there and first did that. It kind of blew my mind
Yeah.
because it was, I think I was working out at Pateris a lot or something. And he was a school teacher.
He was. He
Yeah.
and my grandma both.
I remember him telling me the story about how I was like, how did this happen?
I know.
So it's quite a visionary.
And they've done all the work themselves. I mean,
Yeah.
they've just put so much, time and energy into that. So I kind of took over the wine management side of things. It's still a big family affair. My grandparents started the winery. My uncle John has since taken over as our head winemaker.
Mm.
I manage the tasting room down there. I was going to say both here and there, but we're transitioning some stuff here at the cabin.
More
so
change.
Yeah.
More change.
Inevitable.
It is.
More change. And then your aunt
Is the art. Yep.
Yeah.
She's the Carrie Siderius. She's an amazing artist.
Beautiful.
Wow.
The best. I mean, the
Beautiful art.
best watercolor.
So that's
artist.
like your labels.
Yes. Yep.
Oh,
The labels on all of
all
our
makes sense.
our
And
bottles
on
are
the
done by
wall.
her. Yep.
Yeah.
It all makes sense.
It's beautiful.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we really we all kind of just found where we best fit within that business realm and what our specific talents were and
It's not always easy to have the dynamic of family and business in general.
no,
Do you find it challenging at times?
it was the first couple years.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was the first couple years, but it's not anymore. Everybody knows kind of their lane and where they
Mhm.
thrive and
So when you reflect on that, what advice would you give to people? There's a lot of people trying to move back home and they have family, they're trying to go into business together.
Oh,
Or
yeah.
stay.
or
Yeah, or
stay.
Trying to
right?
figure out
Yeah.
how to stay.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to somebody who wants to go and do a business with their family?
Yeah, the dynamics are hard. Give a lot of grace and patience the first couple years and really don't try to take on more than you are equipped to handle.
Mhm.
I think all of us, we were kind of in this little bit of a power struggle at the beginning, all kind of wanting to prove ourselves amongst the small group of us.
Mhm.
But really, when we all let go a little bit, we really got to see where everybody thrived.
Yeah, that word grace, it's one of the things we talk about over, 32 years in real estate or 34 years in real estate, that if you don't make grace, forgiveness, and generosity part of your
Mhm.
business plan and who you are, things get harder. And if you remember that that's a big part of your business, especially in the valley,
Yeah.
you can run into rough water
Yeah.
pretty quickly
Yeah, and I think that's true for all aspects of
in
life.
life, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
not just the business aspect, but
Yeah, and relationships in general, right?
Mhm.
Personal relationships, family relationships, business relationships.
Yeah.
They're all important to understand that word grace is often not on the forefront of what you're thinking, especially if you're alpha and you're a driver.
yes.
And you're like, I want to get it done, and you're energetic, and your family member
Yes.
has 2 kids and you don't. And
Uh-huh.
there's all these
So
dynamics to your
That's
point.
making me think about something that I think has been pretty challenging in you and Rick's life, that you seem to be fairly open about. Having a tragic event happen in a small town, it can wipe people out.
Mm-hmm.
People can leave or, and never want to come back. Just,
Disconnect.
yep,
Mhm.
disconnect. How do you think, how or why? I mean, what was the catalyst, I guess, for Rick being able to navigate his tragedies?
Him just being an amazing, exceptional person, like first and foremost.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how he. I don't know how he was able to do that. And there was so much. He lost both of his parents in really tragic ways, back to back. And it really just ripped his whole family apart. And there was so many emotions involved with it all. Like
Right.
it couldn't just be grief.
Yes.
It was like the grief first and foremost. And then so much anger around what had happened.
Mhm.
Something he talks about often and he's very open about, which I'm so happy with also, but is the shame. Like there was so much shame around it all. And I remember for a good amount of time, he was like, it feels like the shame feels like me too. Like this feels like my shame. This feels like my family's shame. So he isolated for a while. But he's put in so much work and time and effort on himself. And thank goodness we had Penelope, our oldest. At the time, she was 2 when he lost his mom, and I was pregnant with Isaiah. But he talks all the time about how, like, if it weren't for the kids, like if it wasn't for the brightest light of my life, which was Penelope at the time.
Quite often, kids are salvation.
Mm-hmm.
They pull
For
you
sure.
through.
Because the kids are bigger
Yeah.
than ourselves. Our kids are bigger than
Yeah.
we are.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. And it's hard too. And small communities are so amazing at rallying around, but then also in the years to follow, every time you drive somewhere,
Mm-hmm.
every time you see someone at the grocery store,
Yeah.
every time. So it's this mixed blessing
Yes,
of, I know they
that's-
have me.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I know I'm supported. I know they're never going to let me fall, but it hurts to go to the grocery store
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
because you're going to see something.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So
Yes. That's
I
what
can
I mean.
imagine.
It's very double-edged. I mean,
Mhm.
I have left and come back, and I have
Mhm.
left and I have come back, and I have left and I have come back. And I think the biggest driver when I leave is anonymity. I really struggle with not having anonymity.
Hmm.
There's zero anonymity
Right.
here, which there's a lot of pros
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to that.
I think it's difficult too when the anonymity is on social media. The lack of anonymity is on
Yeah.
social media, and the perception or the comments or the storyline is just inaccurate. And yet,
Right.
all of that, the addiction to that right now
Mm-hmm.
of a lot of age groups, I mean, most, I think the average screen time is like 4 hours a day.
Crazy.
So
I
when,
think
when
it's more than that.
it
I
might
think
be,
so.
and when you think about something tragic, and we all have, it's very close to you, and we've all had friends and family go through some horrific stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and how they survive, and then some of the stuff that is just, it's hard, I bet, not to get angry.
Mm-hmm.
And I get angry, and I've been pretty lucky in life, but the perception of this, I know that person. I mean, this is what this podcast hopefully is about,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
where people can, if they choose to, take the time and listen to it, and maybe learn something that they maybe misunderstood
Mm-hmm.
Right.
about reality. That perception of reality isn't always reality.
No. it
Most
is
of the
not.
time, it's not.
I think any size town, it doesn't matter. You're only going to be happy if you are choosing to be happy.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
So, a lot of times it's just that openness. And what I say all the time out loud, because I want to work on it personally, is everybody's doing the best they can with what they know.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that does lend itself to grace.
Yeah, one of the things I had to learn later to not be judgmental about some things was this quote: "The worst thing that's ever happened to you is the worst thing that's ever happened to you." So when you start to compare yourself to, like with my wife, I'll go, "Well, we're not in a cave in Afghanistan, you know." It
Right.
doesn't work. It's not the.
She doesn't always love that.
Doesn't like that
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
Yeah.
relationship
Mhm.
to. Oh, it could be worse.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
because again, and another thing I learned early in that relationship was, I said, and maybe guys do this, I don't know, but I said, "Hey, you shouldn't feel that way."
Mm.
And she went,
Should.
"Time
This
out."
should.
She goes, "You can tell me a lot of things, but you cannot tell me how to feel."
Mm-hmm.
And I went, "Man, I've been telling people how to feel for like 25 years." And what I meant by it is I didn't mean to make you feel that way. But it
Right.
came,
Yeah.
the articulation was out of bounds.
Yeah.
Right.
And if I hadn't have been told that, I hadn't been told that before.
Okay, do you should yourself? Is that the language you use when you speak in your own mind?
Sometimes.
Yeah. Do you should?
There are days I should.
Do you should?
Mhm.
Yeah.
What do you do?
I try not to should. I really make a conscious effort. It's in my intentions every day. I start with gratitude and I remind myself to give grace and not should. I will hear myself, catch myself shoulding my
Mhm.
child.
Can you give me an example? Any example?
Uh,
What do you mean by
you should be a better listener.
Mhm.
How would you say it differently?
I appreciate when you listen.
Yeah.
The framing.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
One makes you feel guilt and blame
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
shame.
Yeah.
And one makes you feel loved.
Yeah.
And
And
I
then
think we need to do that for ourselves.
yeah, and then
love
you hear
ourselves.
that on social media, like the addiction to listening to it is what I find interesting.
What do you mean?
Meaning how many people, like, there's different social media sites, even here, that sometimes somebody will say something and then just the attacks come.
Mm.
And I'm like, like this much of that.
Oh,
Right.
And
Yeah.
yet you're so willing to come hard. Would
Mhm.
you say that to me? And maybe it's just a generational thing, but I'm like, to me, what you say there, you should be able to say to a person face to face, but that's not.
Well, I mean, before Facebook and all these things, that's
Happening around a coffee table.
Yeah.
Well, that's true. I did
You
used
know.
to say if I'm not being talked about at the coffee shop, I'm not working hard enough.
There you go.
Any
Yeah.
press is good press.
Stir the soup.
Now it's just everyone can
That's
see
good.
it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It's
yeah.
nasty.
I think it
Yeah.
was still happening because
It can
I'm
be
I'm
very
telling you
toxic.
now, when I moved here in the 80s, it was different from how it is when kids move here now, from what I can see and what I can
Mm.
witness from friends and their,
Well,
newer families that have moved here. But man, I did not feel the love.
you
Mm.
didn't.
No.
Do you
not at
think
all.
the perception of reality sometimes in your own mind is worse than it is? Like
Always.
your negative self-talk is like, oh, everybody thinks I'm not, whatever, right?
I try to remind myself that I'm not that important.
Mm,
You
mhm.
know, like to myself, I am. I think I'm that
Yeah,
important.
everybody.
But the perception of other people, to me, like I'm not that important.
Yeah, that's a good way. I call it the 7 people talking to 7 people talking to 7 people. Or it's not everybody.
Yeah.
It's like the people in the school right there, that one little office.
Yes.
Or it's in the shed. It's that one,
Yeah.
or the hospital. It's that
Yep.
one group of people. Now social media has expanded that,
Yeah.
and it can be used for good. A lot of good things come from it. I have a policy on my stuff is like no negativity and no judgment. And one day I looked, I had blocked like 150 people, and a lot of them are my friends. And I was just like, but there's a rule. It's an unwritten rule. You just can't be negative,
Mm-hmm.
and you can't judge.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all positive. It's all family. It's all,
Mhm.
every once in a while I'll throw real estate at it, but it's just if that medium is going to change things for the good and for the bad, just like all change has good sides and bad. And it's here to stay. So learning to navigate it, especially for kids, I bet it's for both of you.
There's a big switch, I
Yeah.
think, with this generation of kids that we're raising,
Mhm.
which is great. And for so long, it's been a free for all.
Yeah.
The electronics, and there's very strong research now on how harmful it is. And
That's interesting.
so, I mean, I know that we're like a absolutely no phone policy. We've already decided that with our kids. When they're 14, they can get their flip phone so they can call us
Yeah.
when they're done with practice. But access to everything right at their fingertips that's uncontrolled, it's terrifying.
Yeah.
So
I
we
would-
were actually just talking about this
Mhm.
because my son is 8 and I am noticing some real big concerns.
Hmm.
And I directly link them to technology.
Mm-hmm.
I have declared December tech free
Mm-hmm.
because I want to know if I'm right. I want to kind of prove or disprove that
Right.
theory.
Right.
You are right.
I will not.
Just
Yeah,
so you
I mean,
know.
I won't stand by and do nothing when I see him struggling and acting out
Mm-hmm.
in ways that are not in his heart.
And the switch is like this. I mean, the kids have iPads that they're not allowed to use at home, but they do use them when we're like going on a long travel.
car
Yeah,
or
no, yeah,
something,
like
yeah.
okay, well, we're going to Seattle, so you guys get to watch on the iPads, and they are zombies. And afterward,
Zombies.
they are not my same kids.
How old are your
They're
kids?
short, 5, 6, and 8.
5, 6. Okay.
Mm-hmm. They're short. They're irritable.
So see, that's interesting. I
Overstimulation.
actually will not ever let Brody have an iPad in the car.
Oh,
That's the time I don't let him have
that's interesting.
technology.
So that he
because-
interacts with you?
Yep.
Is
Yeah.
that the goal?
And I'm telling you, it is hard because
Mhm.
he does not shut his mouth. It's 3, 4, 5, 6 hours
Oh, that's awesome.
of nonstop talking.
Chatty. Mm-hmm.
But I find that in that isolated experience, right, we're trapped in a small space together
Mm-hmm.
with nothing to do.
Mm-hmm.
We talk,
Mm-hmm.
and it. I think anyone with kids or around kids can attest to the fact that the what, why can be draining
Yes.
and a little nerve wracking.
Uh-huh.
But I would rather arrive somewhere where I have to manage my emotions as the grown up than I expect him to.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say if we grew up without it?
Yeah.
Like, don't
Yeah.
come home. Don't get back to the house till dark.
Yeah.
Like,
Praise
get
the
the
Lord.
hell out of
Hallelujah on that.
Yeah.
But-
So glad.
So the question with people with young kids, I'm curious, because my kids are 28 and 32.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say to the opposition point that if you're trying to prevent something from happening that is everywhere, that you're creating you're making it more powerful? Do you understand the
Yeah.
argument there? What do
Mhm.
you say to that?
Mm-hmm.
I'm just curious because I don't have kids that age.
We in our home try to not idolize
Idolize. Yeah.
the technology, and it's not a forever thing.
Yeah.
But these brains that just aren't developed and aren't equipped to handle that kind of
Yeah.
addiction.
Yeah.
Pure
And the
addiction.
stimuli, yeah, it's just it's overwhelming, and I feel so blessed to have found a group of like-minded parents, and that's been really helpful. The kids are in a school now with a group of families that think really similarly. We're not all the same, and we do have varying views
Yeah.
on a lot of things, but really the underlying premise of the whole reason we're here is to keep our kids. Let them be kids
Mhm.
Yeah.
and let them explore the world. And
So knowing it's inevitable that you're gonna have to know how to do this, use that, and that the bad guys are out there, the bad things are out there, they're coming, but your perspective is in time when you mature.
yeah, and when you're ready to
intellectually.
handle those things.
Mm-hmm.
And those exposures are going to happen, but we as parents do have a say in the amount of exposures.
Mhm.
The amount of times that those things are happening.
I love what you said about the transition into a flip phone as a teenager. I work with a lot of youth, and seeing more and more families that
Mhm.
I work with choosing a flip phone over a screen phone. It can do everything that you need it to do.
You can call me. You can
Mhm.
call your friends.
Mhm. And
You
it's a
can
nice
T9
little
text your friends if
There
you
you
want to
go.
do that. Tick, 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 tick.
Yeah. I
Ooh, my
remember
thumbs
that.
were so good.
Oh, you were so
yeah, I was
fast.
so fast.
So fast.
Under the desk. Didn't
Uh-huh.
even have to look at that T9
Oh, wow.
texting. Yeah.
Did you guys go through BlackBerry days, or was that too young? Remember
I was on
BlackBerry?
the cusp
I-
of
Yeah.
BlackBerry.
Yeah, I didn't do BlackBerry.
I was on the cusp.
I laughed the other day. You ever seen those from the first brick phone all the phones
Yes.
that have happened.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, I had all of them.
Yeah. Frank's and mine was first
Pure
phone
addic-
was a bag
Yeah, the bag.
that sat in
Yeah.
our trunk
That's right.
just in case I got stranded somewhere with our kids.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I got a
I don't know how good that would have
Oh,
been.
I mean, we had
ever.
car phones. We had the mounted
Oh, yeah.
Nokia.
Oh,
Yeah.
like the big with the cord
Yeah.
Yeah.
with the.
my first job. Well, my second. I was 20. I had license at 19, and I was selling Wenatchee. I was going to Wenatchee Valley. Then I transferred to Central, and I was working in Yakima as a realtor while I was going to school. And there was old guys like 30. And I was like 20 or 19, and that's when the brick phone. I put my cell phone number on the card, and they were like, "You're an idiot." And I was like, "You guys don't know. I'm going to race right through all of you. I'm just going to dominate." And worked for a company called Help You Sell Real Estate, and the commission fees were small anyway. And I got my first commission check, and it was $750. Now I remember
Wow.
this is probably 1990.
Yeah.
And I got almost to the day I got the first cell phone bill, because that's when they called you, it was $4.99 a minute or whatever, $6.99 a minute, or you called them. It didn't matter. So me putting it on the card turned out to be a very bad idea. I got the bill. It was $750. I was like, they're like, "You idiot! You'll learn the hard way, dumb kid."
Right. There wasn't the unlimited plan.
See why we don't do
Sure.
this? You should listen to your elders.
That'd be like
That's funny.
$1,500,
There
$1,800
you go. All the
today.
cards I just
That'd be
bought, threw
so-
away
All
the
right.
cards.
Kels,
Hilarious.
what? I mean, there's a lot of things. What are one or two, or I don't know, what do you think makes this town special or unique?
So many things.
I know.
So many
Mhm.
things.
I'm not asking you to pick your favorite. Just
I mean, we've talked about it, but the fact that everybody knows everybody, can be both a blessing and a curse, but
Mhm.
it is very much more a blessing
Yeah.
than anything else. I
Yeah.
feel loved. I feel known. My family feels loved and known. Life is so hard anyway.
Mhm.
And like living
Mhm.
here, you never feel like you're doing it alone.
Yeah.
You never feel like
Yeah.
you're alone. I love having a business here in town. How that's allowed me to reconnect and rekindle so many relationships
Mhm.
has been great.
does it feel special to you raising your kids in a town where you were raised and your
Yeah,
parents were raised?
and that I still love it so much. Even with the, exponential change, it's
Mhm.
still the best town there is. I wouldn't go anywhere else.
So you mentioned, are you you guys have vineyards and tasting rooms? Both, right?
Yes. Yep. So we're in a state winery. We grow 90% of our own fruit.
And you said earlier in your business, so just like any commodity, there's challenges,
Yes.
there's regulations, there's employees, there's taxation,
All the
all the
things.
stuff, housing. And you said earlier you said that you think it's close to saturation. What made you say that? Like what do you feel is going to be the next 10 years of this vineyard, this town's evolution?
We need, we so desperately need to diversify our business ventures here. I mean, if we don't have the infrastructure to support the tourism, we have people coming to town that are here strictly for vineyard tours, and that's great, but they can only hit 10, within their couple days stay here. And now there's close to 50 of us, so when it was the first 15 of us, people were able to come and visit all of us, and that was
Mhm.
great.
Mhm.
And then the price is, again, double-edged sword, because we own a home here. From a value standpoint, it's great. We were
Yeah.
lucky to have been able to purchase when we did and build our home. But with the increased real estate values also comes increased stay values.
Mhm.
And like we're comparing like a 1 week stay in Chelan, you can go stay in Mexico
Yeah.
for a week with flights included for a
Yeah.
very similar cost.
Right.
So it's all, it's all difficult. And we had a really
Yeah.
great couple years. I
Yeah.
know sounds crazy, but we had a great COVID.
Mhm.
From sales standpoint. Oh,
Well, it
Well,
blew
some
up.
people did.
yeah,
You know, some people, I was stagnant.
yeah.
You know, I haven't made an income in almost 8 years.
Well, that is going to change,
Yeah.
isn't
So,
it?
yeah.
Yeah.
You know, but it's like you did see that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Where some people really thrived
Mm-hmm.
in that. And some
Mhm.
people were like, and then some people,
Well, it's
Yeah.
interesting to me, like
tanked.
it's the supply and demand, right? At the end of the day, is the number one indicator of price,
Yeah, absolutely.
right? So you have this, to your point, this double-edged sword where you have gentrification happening, where people are moving here from a
Mhm.
more expensive area,
Mhm.
and they're able to now work here, and we see it,
Mhm.
and they're able to sell a home for
Mm-hmm.
more money, and there's still people moving to Puget Sound. That's
Mhm.
still growing,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
and then you need that money.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, you had shared earlier that one of the reasons you had to sell the family home on the lake is the taxes.
Mm-hmm.
And Washington
Oh,
State is
yeah.
very, very difficult to change. That's like a state, from my understanding, it's a state constitutional change, which
Wow.
is very difficult. So therein lies the balance, right? So essential worker housing is one of the things that our development arm that is fairly new and our real estate brokerage is trying to help. And that is a hard problem.
It's a hard problem.
I
Yeah.
joke, and then you have people, I call it slice of heaven mentality, which I love them, I sell to them. But then when they don't want change because they want the culture to stay the same, I do too. I wish it was
It's tough.
1987. I had a good year.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Mhm.
You know, I was a senior in high school.
Right.
I wish I still had the house and the 10 acres. I wish we could have done that, but we
Mhm.
couldn't do that.
Mhm.
It was not a good situation
I mean,
for
I
us.
honestly look at
hard.
people that we know and love that still live on the lake or still have
Yeah.
their family
Mhm.
farm, and I think,
How in the world?
how?
Mhm.
Like,
Mhm.
what magic potion?
Mhm.
I don't know.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
I am proud
Yeah.
of them.
Yeah.
Or-
I'm
yeah.
impressed. I'm
Yeah.
in awe. I have a
Yeah.
little jealousy at times, honestly.
No, I understand. Yeah.
I,
So when you get the people that come here and you get like, I don't want the town to change, and then you have people that are from here, it's interesting to me because a lot of times they don't see the benefit of growth because
Yeah.
they're not personally benefiting. All they're seeing is more expensive this, more expensive that,
yeah.
Right.
and then you add inflation on that, and it's all like, I don't get it. I want it to go into the past.
Mm-hmm.
Yet they're often without that money. Well,
Yes.
they would be even more trouble. There wouldn't be an employment for them, perhaps, if they weren't in a winery, if they weren't in whatever, right? So it's this dichotomy of I need growth, I need money supply, or we
Mhm.
have stagnation, and that doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of towns don't have any growth. A lot
Right.
of towns have suffered greatly.
Well, when you drive from here to Spokane, what do you see?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
tough, empty buildings, empty downtown.
Mm-hmm.
Because
So
they don't have that element that you
Yeah.
were talking about.
yeah, and yet there's a balance there. I call it smart growth. You just kind of figure out what that is and try to figure it out, but
Mm-hmm.
it's so difficult. And I see it. I've seen it for 30 years where people that are working, have a couple of kids, sometimes single parents, 2 jobs. The last thing they want to do, and they got to get their kids to soccer games, football games, sports. Desiree's volleyball club. She's
Yeah.
she's a dictator.
Yeah.
They don't have time to go to a city council meeting or a Chelan County 7:00
yes.
meeting.
Yes.
And then
Yeah.
so you have this vocal minority
Yes.
that have what they need. They have their house, they have their retirement, whatever it is. They're set financially. They're working from home. I call them, anybody that doesn't make 250 grand from home right now, I call them non-mutants.
Mm-hmm.
Those guys are mutants. Okay,
Mhm.
Yeah.
that's
Mhm.
cool for them. But without that silent majority somehow being vocal, you end up with people, in government, in the ear of the silent or of the vocal minority that
Mm-hmm.
drowns out the game plan.
And we all know who the vocals are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like, are you in government really paying attention to what's really happening? And it's, again, if you're not going to go, you shouldn't complain. And I don't go that
That's
often.
a challenge. That is such a challenge.
But it's good to
Yeah.
vocalize. I think it's good to understand it.
Mhm.
And
I
your
would
family
think-
and your family and your family, my family, we all have gone through it.
Mhm.
But don't you
differently.
think in this age of technology, I mean, look what we're doing right now. This is being recorded. It's video.
Yeah.
We can in an instant share snippets or the whole thing, or
Mhm.
you know what I mean, with the world
Mhm.
essentially. Not, I don't know that the world's going to listen to us shatter, but
Well, Kelsey's our first guest, and this thing's going vertical.
I'm just saying, it's like the
Because
whole
of that.
world can, with access,
Mm.
we can reach them
Yeah.
in theory. But we can't find a way for constituents to communicate in an effective manner without going to the town meeting.
Mhm.
Seems a bit crazy, doesn't it?
It does seem outdated. It
Mhm.
seems a little archaic
Mhm.
and almost not inclusive.
Yeah.
I don't like that word all the time, but I will say that it feels a little exclusive. That if you can't go this day, this time, you just don't really have a voice.
Yeah, and then you see
And
some of the attempts
busy.
to kind of get around that is these situations where you're like, sign this petition, and the petition says this happens, the world ends, nobody gives a shit
Yeah.
about anything, and it's all wrong. There's another side to that.
Like our ballots. Oh my gosh, we had to look up each individual question. Like, what in the world is
I
this talking
know.
about?
The
Yes.
language I think that is exclusive too.
And the
It is.
hidden,
Because
hidden
agendas
everything.
I'm
in the
English as a
questions.
first language, clearly.
Yes.
Okay?
Yep.
And I can't understand what they're saying.
I
So
read
then
it
if
and I
you are
say, "Wait,
English
what?
as a second language,
Yeah.
I mean, give me a break.
Yeah.
There are problems greater than this, I know, but even in a small town,
Yeah.
even in a small town, I feel like voices cannot be heard.
I think the goal of this podcast, right, is to come from a place of curiosity.
Hmm.
We talked about that earlier. And,
Yeah.
and empathy and an open mind. And over a period of time, hopefully, this podcast will help people get to know each other in an intimate way and in a way that is educational as well. And even if 2 or 3 or 4 people don't agree in the conversation, and maybe we have nuanced differences, we can still be aligned in the fact that we love the place, we love our friends, we love our
Yes.
family.
Isn't that kind of a new old way
Mm-hmm.
of being in all this
Yeah.
divisiveness? If we really can get to a place where we can be friends with people that we don't agree with.
Well,
I
it's the
think
way
old
it's supposed
school
to be.
is, I think to your
Exactly.
point about kids, like going backward and getting away from tech, I think in our real estate business, old school is new school. I think we go back to face, we go back to handwritten letters, we go back to talking over a cup of coffee,
Yeah.
get a little bit away from, social media ads, a little bit away from email blasts, a little bit away from text. All that stuff is so impersonal. How can we share authentically a perspective when really, if that's what we desire, is authenticity?
Well, and another thing too that
without
why Kelsey came to mind to be on the podcast is
Numero uno.
I just feel
number
so
one
lucky.
again is because she took a challenging time that we all went through with COVID and adversity, and put her kids and her family first, and put her money and time where her mouth was, and teamed up with another mom to open North Shore Christian School.
Oh, you were the founder.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard awesome things about that.
Good.
And
I'm glad to hear it.
I use that just from the anecdotal evidence of other people, I guess, telling me the testimonials when people are coming here with kids and they're looking to relocate and they're concerned, like, because that's one of the big questions when you come from a bigger place to a littler place. What's the school like?
Exactly.
And I think that has been an effect. Like, people are anxiously awaiting that information. Then almost every one of them that I've talked to are liking it.
Well, we didn't used to have much choice,
Yeah.
No
right?
choice,
You either went to Chelan or Manson.
Yeah.
And then there was a problem and kids would switch, or there was a thing, or, and that still happens. That's,
Yeah.
but that was the only choice.
Right. And
Other than fully moving.
earlier you were asking, what's changed in the valley since you were a kid. And to me, that the education choices, not
There's
only
many
that,
choices.
but there's a couple
Yeah.
of I guess private schools, for lack of a different title to give them, but also just the ability to do a little bit at a public school and a lot of it at home, or those kinds of
Homeschool
things.
pods. I mean, there's
all of that stuff.
kinds of opportunities.
Yeah. So.
And a lot of them did come out of COVID.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you said it earlier when I asked you what, where you see coming, and you said diversifying your business income streams.
Mm-hmm.
Well, kudos to you for being courageous and
Thank
to
you.
taking a step into the unknown and that with authenticity and love and grace. I mean, that's rare and it should be commended. I mean, so
thank
go
you.
buy Rio Vista wines right now
And bring your kids to North Christian.
and donate money to the school.
Or at least come to our auction.
Yeah.
At
and
least come to the
have a
auction.
good time
Yeah.
and maybe spend
Yeah.
a little money.
Is there anything we should tell people, like the auction? When's the auction? If this is going to air next week,
Well, we had our summer auction already.
okay.
Okay.
So we, Tara and I are both on the auction committee, so we'll let you know on our official date. But we're looking at the first Friday of December of next year.
And where would that be?
Campbell's.
Next year, Campbell's. So
Mhm.
It was a good time. This
It's a good
It's a good time.
And I think we have found phenomenal support in
Yeah.
our community, which is not surprising.
Not
I think
surprising
We've
at
all
all.
talked about it, but I
Mhm.
think the level of support was surprising to me.
It was
Yeah.
to me too.
Yeah.
It was really great.
The love was. I mean, I'm still blown away.
Me too. I mean, really, it just everything we've talked about, but just giving our kids a space in which they can be kids,
Mm-hmm.
where they can safely express themselves and have Jesus at the center of what they're doing and learning.
Yeah.
I wasn't raised in a Christian household. I didn't have a ton of exposure to faith and religion, and I'm finding it now, which I feel really blessed for.
Mm-hmm.
But there's things that I don't know how to teach at home. Like I need help. It's not second nature for
You know
me.
what? To your point too about how the technology thing, if you take it away, doesn't that make them want it more? I like that some of this is coming from his school environment,
Mm-hmm.
because for me, God, spirituality, universal laws, whatever speaks to you, I think those are all personal, and
Mm-hmm.
I don't want Brody to feel like he's letting me down, or he has to be a certain way. I want him to make his own choices for himself, and so the fact that not everything comes from me,
Mhm.
but it can come from school, that's a gift. That's a gift for me, because
And it's a trusted space that it's coming from,
Yes.
not
Mhm.
an unknown
Right.
space that it's coming from.
In an appropriate manner,
Mhm.
with
Yeah.
appropriate teachings at,
Yeah.
specific ages. And
I'm so glad to hear that it's going that well for
Yeah.
you.
Mhm.
And I just have worked with youth in this valley for a long time, and I'm telling you what, anytime you say it's for some kids, people, how much do you need? What can I do to help?
Yeah.
How can we make this work?
it's so
You can use
special.
my space. If they don't have
And I think
money,
I think it's a,
other resources they're willing to give.
Yeah, I mean, that just gave me chills. It's
Yeah.
so.
and from the
so
outside
true.
looking in, also, don't be afraid to ask.
Mm.
I mean, because there's a lot of pride and there's a lot of shame in that instinctually, but I think it's important to know that there's love around you,
Mhm.
and it may be hard, and maybe there's a conduit for you somewhere else. Like go to one of the educators at the school and talk to them, or
Yeah.
if you're embarrassed to say it, but don't be. Like
Mhm.
every one of us has gone through some stuff, and
Yes.
together you get through it. Don't think you're alone. I think that this podcast, hopefully, if nothing else, will demonstrate that we're all uniquely different. We're all very much the same with
Mhm.
fears and apprehension and insecurities. That's just normal.
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
way
And
more
life-
alike.
And
Way
life-
are different.
Yes.
and
Way
life
more
hits you,
alike.
man. It's gonna hit you. So let's do it together. Well,
Yeah.
I want to thank you.
Yeah.
I know we could sit here and talk for like 4 or 5 days, but
Yeah.
I appreciate you,
Oh,
and
it's
it's been
really
fun
fun.
getting
Kelsey
to know
can
you
bring
better.
the coffee and wine. We'll just stay here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if you could have brought
Yeah.
wine, let's do it again. Let's start right now. No, we got Earl Stanford coming in.
Yeah,
next.
that's right.
I'm excited to talk to him as well. We're going to have him. He graduated, I think, with my dad in 1952, and he's got a
So
whole
cool.
bunch of stories.
That was really fun.
So that's the good news. We're going to have all kinds of people on this podcast,
Mm-hmm.
and I just am really grateful. And say hi to your dad.
Yeah.
I will.
And I
Thank
think he's
you
working
so,
by my
so
office.
much.
Maybe he'll answer my phone call.
All
I
right.
tried
Well,
it.
thank you.
and, it takes
Anybody
him
else
like
have
four
anything
four
else to
times
say
for
before
a
we
call back.
head out? Close up?
It's
All
been
right.
great.
See you
Yeah, it's
next.
been great.
Thanks, Kelsey.
Thank you.